everybody. It's me, Anthony Bowling, and another episode of Chasing Gazillions. Ain't the same as making millions. Another day with the Anthony Bowling Group, local real estate professional here, bringing to you information that you need and want to know about what's important for you and your lives here in the great DMV, particularly here in Washington, D.C. and in Ward 7. I got a special one for you tonight. You saw the topic, and that's why you coming into the chat, because you wanted to know who's best able to lead this ward post Vince Gray. I know you're excited to know, and that's why I brought you a great one here. We're going to have two outstanding guests here tonight. I guess we'll bring them over. Roger Mitchell, Jr., MD, is going to be our special guest host tonight. Although somebody's cutting grass. Who cutting grass? Okay. 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 There you go. All right. So I didn't say he was experienced. I said he was a special guest. He's going to come on tonight. And guess what, guys? It's not going to be me. I know what you're saying. Anthony, you know what you're doing. You asked the right question. No, not tonight. We're going to have Roger ask whatever he wants to ask of Valerio VJ Johnson, your next Ward 7 council member. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what to expect because the questions are not scripted. When you hear the question from Roger, that's when we're going to hear the question from Roger. And then when you hear the response from VJ, I want you to be listening to hear, is that the answer you want to hear from the next council member? So with that, we're not even going to slow it down. We're just going to open it up. Roger, you got the floor. Your mic is on. You are hot. Welcome to the show. Feel free, Roger. Tell our audience, this is live, by the way, just in case you thought it was recorded. It is being recorded, but it's live. It's going across all of my internet platforms, Facebook, LinkedIn. If you on LinkedIn, you on Facebook, okay, your people might be watching you right now. Keep that in mind. But go ahead, tell the people who you are, why you're here, and then just let us hear what it is you want to know.
Anthony, it is amazing to be here on your platform that is worldwide. I know that you just got back from a much needed vacation where your people couldn't even get you. When we were in the green room telling me how you couldn't even get a Wi-Fi signal at all. And, I apologize to your listeners. My people outside cutting my grass. You said it was live and unscripted. I'm excited to be here. I'm a physician. I'm a doctor here. I live, work, play in Ward 7. So, I'm not a spectator physician. I talk to some of my doctors that come to Howard University where I practice, where I serve as chief medical officer for outpatient ambulatory care. So we have about 28 clinics that serves every single ward in the District of Columbia. Primarily 5, 7, and 8 is who comes and sees us in our hospital and in our clinics. And I deal with patient safety and quality. And I came from government. So many people might know me from my days in government as the chief medical examiner in DC. I was a forensic pathologist, still a forensic pathologist, but now more in executive healthcare leadership. But I tell my people, I said, you can't do the work of community and live all the way out in the suburbs. It's very difficult to do the work of community and you live in a community that's not your community. And so, I'm excited about VJ. I met VJ on the Langston Golf Course. I know that's probably a lot of people's point of reference. Be careful playing golf with that man. He can play the sport of golf, and he does it with integrity. and so I've known him for probably about 5 years, and getting to know him better,
Mhm.
um, and really enjoy how he shows up in space, how he shows up as you know, a man of substance,
Sure. Sure.
um, and so and and this is a race. This is a race, and I wanted to be able to get in space with him to have a conversation, um, uh, for me to get to know him better. I'll be honest, right? For me to get to know him better, but
Mhm.
also in a space that's as safe as the space that you've created for him and for me, so that Ward 7 can get to know him better.
Yes.
Um, and as the election is upon us, right? People are voting now, um, and as the election continues to move forward, I think it's important for Ward 7 to have all as much information as possible going into that booth.
Exactly.
And it's hard to have that information with pamphlets that's coming to your house, with door knocks. So as many opportunities that I get to talk to candidates and friends, like VJ in public. I called them up because we had a forum
Mm.
uh, not too long ago that I
Okay.
hosted,
Okay.
and did, and he wasn't up there,
Mm.
and I called him, and I said, yo, V, um, we should do a Facebook Live. We should do an Instagram Live. Just you and me talking about some of those same issues. And he said, I got Anthony Bolin. I got him. I got AB. I didn't know we were quadrillionaires, so I'm with that. Um, so you're giving me this opportunity to talk to VJ.
Mhm.
And I want to do that. So you tell me how to move now, because I got some questions for him, that I think he's ready to answer.
Well, the show is yours, Dr. Mitchell. We bring individuals, we've been bringing people on who have said, like you, they've been in a forum for whatever reason, the question that they wanted asked wasn't, or it wasn't enough time for their candidate to expound on so that they heard what they're listening for. This is an opportunity where you're going to ask your questions, and we know that the audience out here who's getting this message, that you know what, that's a question they wanted to ask. That's the answer. They're looking to hear what the answer is to that. And so the floor is completely yours.
So VJ, listen, man. Today I was at the funeral of the 3 year old who got murdered here in the city. Um, uh, and so much so that I took the rest of the day off. I mean, I just couldn't. I deal with death on a regular basis. I deal with crime and violence on a regular basis. That's part and parcel of my career path. But how's that hit for you? How does that hit when a 3 year old can get killed in this city? And whether it's Ward 7, Ward 8, we know that in Ward 7 we have our fair share of violence and violent death. Talk to us about kind of your approach to public safety, your approach to violence, um, and how that looks, and how you'll govern as a Ward 7 council member in regards to that.
Yeah, let's just start off and just acknowledge the grief, acknowledge the loss to family, the trauma to community. One death is one too many, and it hits and hurt worse when it's one of our young people, because that is our future. The circumstances around that issue was just traumatic. I think when we think about public safety, or when we think about violence, especially gun violence, or heinous acts that end in someone losing their life or being injured or being harmed, we got to think about the mindset, right? You got to think about the mindset of the individual, but you also have to think about the context in which this stuff happens in, right? It's not a vacuum. Um, Look, I have been hard pressed on laying the hammer down on violent offenders. I am equally as hard pressed on family stabilization. Now, I understand there's a three-pronged approach here. It's a lot of conversation about love and hugs and support. So you want to be able to do intervention. You want to be able to do prevention. You want to be able to do restorative work. But we got to hammer home that those who harm us, they lose certain privileges, and they need to be dealt with swiftly, and they need to be taken off of the streets. And I think you know this better than I. We don't have we don't do a good job as a city finding our criminals and prosecuting them where we need to, right? I forgot the statistic, but it's an unfavorable number of crimes and murders that go unsolved in the District of Columbia. And if people think that they can create havoc and cause harm and injure people and not be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, that's the first problem. Criminals need to be afraid of consequence. Criminals need to be afraid of law and order. So we got to create a system of accountability. We hold everybody apart, in part, a part of the solution, but also a part of the resolve. So that's one thing, right? Are we doing enough to make those who would harm us afraid of the consequences of law and order? Two, are we giving caregivers the supports that they need, the resources that they need, the training, the education, access to opportunities, and increased income? I don't think we're doing a good job either, right? But I think those of us who were privileged and blessed to go off to college and earn specialized degrees and make decent, livable wages and to buy homes and establish families and contribute to society, we're good. But even then, we are impacted, right? But what about those who were failed by the education system, or those who were failed because they didn't get the necessary resources they need to deal with their drug addiction or their mental health or emotional health, right? Are we doing enough for those people? I always remember Marion Barry say, we always got to do the least, we have to do the most for the least, the last, and the lost. And that's how we will be measured as leaders. And that's how our city will be measured, by how we take care of our vulnerable. Now, also the third point, are we investing in out-of-time school programming at a level that's sufficient or that exceeds sufficiency? We know that our young people find themselves in trouble between 3 and 6. And that's if they're going to school, right? And that's if they're going to school on time. And that's if they go to school on a regular basis. But what are we doing for that 3 to 6 time period when they're out of school and their parents haven't gotten home from work? What are we doing to invest in our young people to make sure that they're getting access to enhance academic services, skills development, or just the best programming that teaches them how to be the best human beings they could be, how to make solid choices, and how to be kids, right? A lot of our children, a lot of our students don't even get to be kids in the city, right? They have to take care of their little brother and sister. They got to go to the grocery store, and they got to pick up their sibling from school, and they got to travel across town on the bus. These just aren't the best situations to ensure that our future is protected, right? Now, what does that mean? It means that we have to question ourselves internally as a city. Do we really care about our young? Do we really care about our young? And if we care about our young, we protect their caregivers and we protect the communities that they live in. And so that's sort of my thinking about it.
Yeah, there's an old African proverb that young people are starving for love from the community, and if they don't feel it, they will burn it down to feel its warmth.
Yeah,
Um,
that's that Black Power. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're really in that space. So talk to us a little bit about education. You touched on it.
Yeah.
Maybe the state of education as you know it in Ward 7, and what we need to be doing from several of the vocational schools and the technical schools. None of them are in Ward 7.
Yeah.
And so talk a little bit about that K through 12, if that's your area of interest, the technical school area, if that's your area of interest, UDC, and how the community college should be showing up in Ward 7. Lay that out for us, seeing that you made that connection between education and violence prevention.
Yeah, and let's add the third component to that, right? Which is economic development, investment in neighborhoods, okay? I always fail to tell people that I'm a product of vocational education. I graduated from Phelps Vocational Education, which is in Ward 5. When we look at Ward 7 education, and we look at it over the last 10 years, and we look at the systematic divestment in our communities, where we closed our schools, took the money and invested the money into other wards, and we replaced our traditional public schools with charter schools. Our community was told that we could not sustain the traditional schools that we had in our community. That I've fought and I still fight with community over the Winston Education Campus, which was a middle school option. Actually, it was EC. So it went from K through 8th, right? And it was a big loss to the community, the 10 communities south of Massachusetts Avenue. And all you hear in Ward 7 is, how do I pathway or position my child to avoid Sousa, avoid Kelly Miller, and put them on a track that's going to land them into a high quality public education school, like maybe Duke Ellington, or School Without Walls, or Banneker, or even Jackson Reed, right? Our community, our network, we're looking to track, or else we got to pay. We're going to pay $20,000, $30,000 to go to St. Aubs, to go to Georgetown Day, right? To go to Murray, to go to, so we got to pay. But that's not an option for everybody. Some people cannot lottery into other schools because of the transportation options, right? Some of us can burden ourselves and drive 45 minutes to get our kid into Hardy, to get our kid into Eaton, to get our kid into Maury, right? Some of us can do that. That's a privilege that we can do. But should we have to? And I've been hard pressed that our neighborhood schools need to be those that other communities want to lottery in. 30% of Ward 7 parents are choosing to travel into other people's community to their livable and walkable community schools. But we don't have that. Even where I am, Ann Beers is a great local school for the Hillcrest community and for the 10 neighborhoods south of Massachusetts Avenue. But when we start to look at elementary school options, you're hard pressed to find ones that parents are comfortable leaving their child in through the 4th grade. Look, Sousa is something that I've been talking about and bringing attention to, and sometimes they misunderstand what I'm talking about with Sousa. But Sousa has 4 elementary schools: Kimball, Ann Beers, Randall Highlands, and Plummer, that feed into it. Sousa is a great potential. It can hold 800 plus students, but right now 220 students go to Sousa because those elementary school parents are choosing, right, to move their child elsewhere, not because Sousa is a problem, but the stigma attached to Sousa is a problem, and the community in which Sousa exists is a problem, right? When you talk to parents, and the parents that I get the privilege to talk to, you hear that at the end of the day, they don't care what's going on in Sousa. They do not fathom and trust that their child can go and come and go back and forth to Sousa every day for 3 years without fear of harm. So what are we going to do? We got to make the investment. I've seen them invest in Wards 4, Ward 6, Ward 3, and I've seen them divest in Ward 7, which is one of the reasons I'm running, to fight. Everybody knows, I'm not afraid to fight. I fight for the things that are right. I fight for the things that are just and principled. And you can't allow people to tell you what value your community should be. We got great people in our community. I've been doing this for 20 plus years. 2012 is the last time I think anyone has brought the education stakeholder community together to talk about Ward 7 education. And I did that as the chair of an ANC. Have we done it since? No. Do we need to do it? Yes, I will as a council member. Roger, but how do we get our parents, our caregivers, to invest in our neighborhood schools? Because even when I was an Eaton parent, I got to understand that Eaton wasn't a better facility than Ann Beers. It had its challenges, but what it had was a parent community that had more resources, that had more time, and that dedicated and committed themselves to supplementing the system's deficiencies because they knew economically it was cheaper for them to pour into their neighborhood school than to go pay for private education as early as elementary school. So we got to think differently. And the Ward 7 I started serving in is not the Ward 7 that I'm serving in now. We have flourishing communities. We have a number of high income earners. We have a number of homeowners. We have a number of highly educated and highly skilled people that are getting involved into the leadership roles and the servant roles. They're taking on roles as civic leaders. They're taking roles as ANC commissioners, and they are now demanding more for 7. And that's why our hashtag for this campaign has been more for 7, because we're demanding it, we're deserving it, and we got to fight for it now. And that's why I'm running, so you can have a council member that's not afraid to fight for what's right.
Tell us, time is running, but you brought up, you said you were an Eaton parent. Can you tell us about your family, man? Tell us about, who you are and kind of, a little bit about your background and kind of how you came up in the city.
Roger, before we let VJ answer that, we'll just cut in one. Want to remind you, the floor is yours. You have as much time as you need, as much time as you want to give and share with us, brother. We certainly appreciate it. So there's no time limit on you. Second, this is chasing gazillions. Ain't the same as making millions. Hanging out with Anthony Bowling and the Anthony Bowling Group, local real estate professional here, serving all your needs here in the DMV. Thank you for coming to our show. We hope that you are enjoying this conversation. This is our sponsored break. We got to pay the bill. We ain't got no bill, but I just want to get in here because I just want to get in.
So my experiences, right? I know lived experience is a thing, and it's just mine, right? But I've noticed as I've gone out and introduced the ward to me as a candidate, and I say introduced the ward to me as a candidate because the ward knows me as a VJ community man. So we have to reorientate them to why I need to go downtown and fight for them. But I grew up in a marriage. My parents were married and they got divorced. And the reason why I talk about family stabilization is because I literally grew up in a broken home. Both of my parents remarried, and that had a dramatic impact on how I saw the world growing up and how I moved around, right? No control, no fault of my own, but moving through different schools, different neighborhoods, different communities, no stabilization, no place to really call home but the global DC, right? And when you think about parents or caregivers and kids, children who grow up without a dad, or they grow up living with their grandparents, right? Or they grow up with 2 and 3 siblings with just their mom. That is impactful on how they see the world and how they experience the world. You're a family man. You know the difference between a unit and how you operate to solve problems. So me going to multiple schools, me falling through the cracks, me struggling academically. Most people don't know I didn't learn how to read and write until I got to Savannah State University, and I spent the whole year in remedial programming at Savannah State University. And people are oftentimes surprised that I didn't learn how to read and write until I got to college because I can write so well now. But that was me being determined to not be dumb, right? And I think a lot, and I think about my words before I say it, because most of my life, half of my life, I experienced being quote unquote dumb, right? But children experience that. And so when I talk about what that does for adolescent or a teenager, what other skill do you have if you can't effectively communicate, or you can't effectively understand your feelings, or the power dynamic because of the caregivers that you're dealing with are not equipped? They may be unintentionally abusive, right? But how do you show up in the world? And we want to know why the 13-year-old got the gun in the first place. Well, it's a child who had to grow up in a way that children shouldn't grow up. They had to experience the world differently, right? I understand the despair and the hopelessness of looking at adults who are responsible for you not meeting your needs consistently and timely. So when you get a place of autonomy and you get out in these streets and you start to see elements that will put an extra coin in your pocket, or you in a crew and you want to fit in because you're trying to belong, right? You start to find yourself on the margins of society very early on, right? This is the experience and the insights that I'm bringing to my role as council member. But thank God I have a master's, right? I went to school, I got through, I've done everything I can do to supplement for the things I didn't get early on. And I'm constantly rebuilding myself, and I'm constantly preparing myself to be more useful, to be of greater service to people that I identify with, to help them, and to use government to do that, which is why I'm one of the best, if not one of the better, if not the best person at making government work for my community.
No, I appreciate your candor, right? You know, I grew up fatherless and drug addicted parents, and you know, you're right. It does shape your perseverance, right? It does shape who you want to be. You know, you know, you talked a little bit about economic development as a third pillar. I want to hear a little bit more about that, but I you know, we when I think about a restaurant to go to in Ward 7,
yeah,
I can only think about Salatai.
Well, we got to take you to Highland. So in Hillcrest, we're doing
take me
June 4th.
Take me to Highland. So now we got two. Okay, thank you.
Miss Toyers. We
Okay,
got
I
health
need
store
I,
company,
I
right?
need a I need a I need a whole list.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
let's talk about it. Tell me what we're doing. Tell me how you're gonna bring, you know, yes, the community-based restaurants, you
Yeah.
know, Hillcrest. When I first moved back to DC, I was looking over in Hillcrest and I was looking at that view off the Hillcrest
Yeah.
and that beautiful, beautiful view. You know, talk to us about what we're bringing towards 7, that we don't have to go to 5 and 6 and the wharf to have that type of experience, from a high dining restaurant type of experience. Is that coming towards 7 when you're council member?
Yeah, yeah. We have a lot of projects that are stalled, and I'm gonna talk about Hillcrest because I can talk about that. I can talk about it as the president of the association, which was the community group 20 years ago that envisioned doing something different with Skyland. I can also talk about my role in the Washington East Foundation, and what we were able to do with the 2900 block of Nelson Place, which I point to. And while it's not high or fine dining, it is all Black, all minority, all women businesses on the 2900 block of Nelson Place. And it's a quiet treasure. And while people say, oh, those aren't the businesses that we want, well, I want to show people that that is a model for economic development at a neighborhood level, where people like you and I are in business, right? I also want to talk about the $1.2 million of investment, community benefits, that came with the redevelopment of the Skyland, which allowed for Roman Rooster, like that barbershop, and Tropicana to be built out into that development, which are minority owned. Okay. Plus the Job Center, the Skyland Workforce Development Center, which reports giving 1,000 residents access to job training and job placement, right? Again, that was done and driven by neighbors along the Pennsylvania Avenue corridor, spearheaded by neighbors from Hillcrest and Penn Branch, through the Washington East Foundation, through the association. And what they did was able to hold Anthony Williams accountable and get the investments. They had the mix of strategic partners, and they never allowed government to not fulfill this promise. When I grew up, that development had a discount mark there. I remember catching the W bus through there to go to the CVS to get my grandma's medicine. I remember the AutoZone, right? It was a real hot mess. And people think, oh, we did it for economic development reasons. They did it to fight crime. They did it to bring respect and stability to the neighborhood. Now, the economic impact of that, yes, that community within a mile radius was losing $300 million to all of those places or areas, right, outside of the community. So the money was there, but crime was there at the same time. And that's why I tell people, yes, public safety is the number one issue because people fear it and they feel it, but we can change communities with investment. All right. When my parents divorced, I lived on 8th Street, on 12th and G Street, right? That was a mess. They invested in 8th Street. They changed the comprehensive plan, right? They designed some ways to do some strategic incentives and investments. And look at 8th Street now. It wasn't like that when I was a kid. But intentionality is very important. And you need a leader, you need a council member that's not afraid to upset the apple cart, right? I'm not saying being a rebel rouser. I'm not saying blow up the building. I'm saying, hey, like Marion Barry used to do, if you want to come do business here with us, what is in it for us? You don't get to just come to our community, extract our resources out, and not invest in the development of our community. And the reason why I'm leading is because, look, I understand what the community south of Massachusetts Avenue did to get a Skyland Development Town Center. We can do that at Fletcher Johnson. We can do that at Capitol Gateway. We can do that at Deanwood. I mean, where we sit, we have the Good Hope Marketplace, which we're trying to work with the owners to understand the leases so we can time them, so we can put more investments, more businesses from you and I into those shopping centers. We have 10 commercial nodes. Why aren't we thinking like that? We can think like that. And if you look at the history of our ward, each council member took an issue, right? H.R. Crawford took housing and senior housing. Kevin Chabas took education. Vincent Gray took health and human services. What time do you think it is for us? What do we need to focus on now? Getting our equitable share of the city's prosperity, which we've been denied.
Yeah. And I love that. I love that so much because, I believe there's violence prevention in every policy. I'm a violence preventionist. So I believe that, economics is a bulletproof vest, jobs and access to jobs, but not just access to jobs, but, this sense of ownership and community and protection of community is extremely important. You talked about the nodes. I'm not far from the Minnesota Avenue Safeway.
Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit about what you would envision in that. That it's a beautiful library that's there.
Yeah.
I frequent that library. Boys and Girls Club is right there. Minnesota Avenue, has so much potential.
Yeah.
But I honestly do not shop my groceries at that Safeway. I don't shop the groceries at that Safeway. I don't shop my CVS at that CVS, right? And I know it's changed, and there's some things that I go in there every once in a while, but I don't shop there.
Yeah.
But I want to because it's the closest thing to me.
Yeah.
I would prefer it. Talk to us about what your thoughts are about what we can do in that shopping center that's going to benefit community.
I can talk about what was done and who did it, and I can talk about what we've done on our side with the Alabama Avenue Safeway in the Good Hope Marketplace.
I love it.
And I think Councilmember Gray laid a great foundation. The advocates on your side of town got his attention, got his office's attention. And I think early on, a few years back, they did protests and they went and they inspected and they met with local leadership and regional leadership. And we got an understanding out of that. And it speaks to another issue. It speaks to, again, we're going back to economic development. It speaks to the economic situations of our households. Most of the folks who shop at both of those Safeways are on some type of food subsidy program from the government. WIC, TANF, SNAP, and maybe something else, right? So what is the diet and what is the buying habits of a person who can only shop once a month, or a person who can shop, right, when they have means to shop? They're going to buy canned goods. They're going to buy a lot of processed foods that stretch, that last longer. And so the retailer is going to provide those services to those people. I believe in business, and I believe businesses respond to economic demand. They go where the dollar is. Businesses are more dependable than politicians, right? Because it's about solving complex problems and making a dollar doing it, right? That's the crux of business, right? I'm gonna solve a problem and I'm gonna get paid to solve the problem, right? When we went to Alabama Avenue, I happened to be the single member district commissioner where Good Hope Marketplace is, and a neighbor, Wayne, called me, and his issue was that the Safeway wasn't putting the wine and the beer into the black bags. That was a big issue for him. And when he brought it to me, I was like, that's not a big deal to me. But he convinced me. He changed my mind. And then we were able to go to Next Door, and we protested on Next Door. in addition to understanding that Safeway was looking to get into one of Gray's incentive programs. He's done a lot of legislative work to incentivize grocery and retail options to come to Ward 7 by making, subsidies available. Those folks came out, and on Nextdoor, there was 150 negative comments in 24 hours. Nobody cared if Safeway left. So the owners of the shopping center, the Kodak Group, came down to the ANC meeting and said, what do we have to do? Because they didn't want to lose Safeway because it was their anchor store at the Good Hope Marketplace. And they were so afraid that they was going to lose their anchor store, which was going to cost them economically. And how was they going to replace a Safeway in the Good Hope Marketplace? They were so afraid of losing it, right? I tell people all the time, we understand the vote. We do not understand use of our dollar. And if we pair the vote with the dollar, we could do more in our community. And when we look at other communities, that's what they're doing. So why can't we do it? And we can.
Yeah, listen, man. I can talk to you all night. I know that there's a forum coming up that you're going to go to, and hopefully I'll see you there. But talk to us about, this is my last question for you.
Yeah.
I like legislators. I really do. I like, there are legislators in Congress that have been there historically, and they got, couple pieces of legislation, and they're co-authors or they just signed on. Talk to us about what your legislation is going to look like. When you first arrive, what law? What do you want to pass? How do you want to legislate? What does that look like for you in that first period of time when you may or may not have a committee chair? Is rare people that can come in and chair a committee as a freshman in the city council. You're going to have to, to be a legislator and to move legislation as not a chair is not impossible, but you got to be a strong legislator to do it. Talk to us about how you're going to move legislation and what that legislation, maybe we can peek in your bag about what that legislation may look like.
Well, I don't want to give you too much because there's 9 other candidates still in my platform as we speak. And I'm thankful. People have said, thank you for getting in this race. We got in this race January 12th, and we have shaped the conversation to be more substantive and about issues. Before we got in this race, it was about likability. It was about energy. It was about youth. We make it about issues. Now, let me tell you how to navigate the council to get things done for Ward 7 legislatively. Now, look, I am not the lawyer in the race. Look, I am not proclaiming that I'm an author of 1,000 pieces of legislation in my first 100 days. I'm not. I want to go downtown in the first council period, the 2 years without a committee, and find my place in 5 other committees and wedge myself in a place where I'm always the swing vote so I can trade with the other council members. And I'll tell them, your bill goes up to committee or down, right, if you don't do nothing for Ward 7. Now, but here's the most important thing, Roger, that we must do. Our civic infrastructure, our participatory community is not as strong as it used to be when Vincent Gray came into office. It was decimated by COVID. The office has been struggling because of his health challenges. So we have experienced in the last 4 years loss of community. I got to build the community back, right? You don't want me to go downtown and just horse trade with other council members without being informed by our neighbors, do you? No, you don't. So we have to build the civic infrastructure back up. We have to empower our ANCs. We have to empower our civic leaders. We have to have monthly meetings again, quarterly meetings again, right? We have to bring everybody back to the table so I can be informed of what's happening neighborhood by neighborhood. look, I presented some great ideas. I presented some things that I've been exposed to from working under leaders over the last 20 years that I do know, but I don't know everything. There's 29 neighborhoods in Ward 7. Plus, we have west of the river, which is adding a new dynamic to our ward. I have to build the civic infrastructure first and foremost. I have to be in community. I have to be present. I have to get you and others to come testify and write letters and champion your causes with me. I will fight for whatever's brought to me. I will negotiate whatever's brought to me. But right now, where we sit, do you feel that we have the strongest community that we had when Vincent Gray came into office? The community that elected Tony Williams, the community that put Councilman Gray into the chairmanship, the community that put Vincent Gray into the mayor, that made him the executive. We don't have that infrastructure like we used to. I have to build it. It is the council member's job to do that. That's why our message is making Ward 7 one by building bridges and connecting people to what they want and need. That's what I envision for our office.
Listen, man, I appreciate you, man, and taking the time, picking up the phone, and willing to bring me to a place where I can make cajillions. I mean, I ain't never been in a room that promises the cajillions, and I'm all for moving that forward. Thank you, Anthony, my good brother, man, for allowing me to be in this space with you all.
No, brother, thank you. And before you go, Brother Roger, everybody want to just give a thanks to our good brother Roger Mitchell here for coming on to the show. We're gonna let VJ close it out before I go, but we appreciate you. We appreciate those questions. They really dug deep and brought out a lot of important information that people wanted to hear and that they needed to know. Yeah. VJ.
Look, Roger, I will see you this weekend. I saw your name on the list. I don't know who's going to be paired with me, but I'm looking forward to next weekend's activities. Anthony, I want to leave the voters with this, right? I really appreciate Dr. Mitchell coming here and asking us the substantive question and giving us a forum to speak. Here's where I want to draw a clear distinction. Voters have 10 options, but one choice. And voters are going to make choices based on who they know, like, and trust. But they're going to make the decision based on who they know, like, and trust to do the job of making government work for Ward 7 residents. I understand there's great talent in this ward. I understand there's great talent in this race. I am being pushed and I'm being challenged. I mean, there are candidates in this race that got brilliant, lofty, great ideas. They got sponsorships. They got supporters. They got everything, right? But they don't have 20 years of making government work for Ward 7. And I ran in 2008 when I was their age. So imagine me then. Look at them then, right? And look at me now, 17 years later. This is 17 years of wisdom, experience from failure and from success. It is no way. I tell them all the time. We had lunch today after we left the forum at the jail. 20 years experience cannot be diminished by 6 months of campaigning with government financing. I believe that. They said, V, you can't win. Now they say, oh, we can't see a pathway to victory. Now they say, oh, shucks, VJ is coming up the middle. We got to watch out for him. Hey, man, it's 2 weeks left. I'm here. And even if we win by one vote, a small margin, we're going to do right by the ward.
Everybody, Valerio VJ Johnson, everybody, your next Ward 7 council member. We appreciate you. We appreciate your time. We appreciate your care and your compassion for all that you have done for the residents of Ward 7, but more importantly, for your vision and all of what you are intending to do to carry us forward into the future. Thank you both, gentlemen, for coming on to Chasing Gazillions. Ain't the same as making millions. Hanging out with the Anthony Bowling Group here. Thank you all. All the best, gentlemen. Have a great evening. See you at the forum.